Hello and welcome to the PAPI English podcast. My name is Sam and I am your English teacher. And in this episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking all about London. So if you're thinking about going to visit London as a tourist, or perhaps you're thinking about going to London to learn English, or even going to London to work, you might find this podcast very interesting because we're going to be learning about some different people's perspectives of London, what it's like to live there, but also what it's like to visit London as a tourist. In this podcast, we're going to be looking at some stories, some funny stories about people who have visited London. I'm also going to be looking at some of the language, and then later on in the podcast, I'm going to call my sister who lives and works in London, and we're going to find out what is it like to live in London. Also, she's going to give you some advice if you're looking to visit London as a tourist, but also if you're going to live in London for a longer time to learn a language or even to work. And then at the end of the podcast, we're going to do a little fun quiz with my sister about London, which you can play along with as well to see how many of the questions you can get correct. Okay, so let's get going with the podcast and let's hear some funny London stories. Okay, so now we're going to hear some stories about people who have visited London, some funny stories, and we're going to try and learn some English with it. So the first story is from Mariana, who visited London with her family. When I went to London for the second time, I went with my parents, my older brother, and my two grandmothers, one of whom had started an English course for this occasion. Okay, I like this story already. They've gone to London as a family and the grandmother has prepared for this trip. She's done her English course. She's going to impress everyone in London with her fantastic English. I'm excited to find out what happens next. The story starts when we arrived in London. We took a taxi to the hotel. During the journey, my grandmother wanted to change places in the taxi. So she changed places, but she slipped and fell. Oh no. So if you slip, it means you lose control of your feet and you slide. Okay? So she slipped and fell, fall over. As the scene was very funny, everyone laughed. And the driver didn't understand anything. Well, I guess the grandmother is okay. She slipped and fell, but everyone laughed, so I hope she's okay and she hasn't hurt herself. The next day, we woke up for breakfast, arriving at the hotel restaurant and started eating. But at a certain point, my paternal grandmother saw that the bread was missing. And as she was taking classes in an English course, she went down to ask. The moment has arrived. She's been preparing for this. She's been doing her English course. And now there is no bread. She's going down to ask. She's going to take this opportunity to use her English. I'm excited. Let's see what happens next. But at that moment, she was scared. And instead of saying, "I want more bread, please," she said, "I am bread." Okay. That made everyone laugh instantly, including the other hotel guests. After all, she went to speak to my uncle, who just said, "Mom, did you really study English for more than a year to just say, 'I am bread'?" We still laugh about this today, and we always say, "I am bread" to her. I mean, the great thing about this story is it shows that if you go and visit a place, you can make mistakes. You can make mistakes with the language. It's all kind of part of the fun. And at the end of it, you're going to have some great stories. That's the best thing about traveling and learning new things. It gives you stories, stuff to look back on. And this family will always have this story. And they will never let their grandmother forget that she said, "I am bread," which I think is great. I really like it. Okay, let's listen to the next story, which is from Turkalp, who also visited London. We went to London for a school project with the Imperial College London. Imperial College London is a university in London. First, we decided to sightsee London. So if you sightsee, it means you visit all of the important places to go sightseeing. So we saw Big Ben, Tower Bridge, St. Paul's Cathedral, and at the end we went to Trafalgar Square, where there is a fountain. While I was having a photo taken in front of the fountain, a bird, I think it was a seagull is the typical bird you get by the sea, pooped onto my project files. It's pooped onto his project files. And while I was trying to clean it with a wet towel taken out of my pocket, I dropped the files into the fountain. Oh dear. Well, first of all, he's trying to clean the files with a towel taken out from his pocket. I mean, he must have big pockets because towels are big. Okay, maybe he means a tissue here. Okay, a tissue is quite small, you throw it away, but a towel is what you use when you finish with the shower, for example. But okay, maybe he had a towel in his pocket, I don't know. And then he's dropped the files into the fountain. Wow. Secondly, it was cold because it was autumn. We ate fish and chips, very good, because it's a traditional British food. Excellent. After I had eaten it, I felt sick and like I had the flu. Oh no. I think the cold weather with the fish affected me badly. At first I ignored it, but while we were walking along the Millennium Bridge, I vomited down the bridge into the River Thames. I am embarrassed. Oh dear. So fish and chips and cold weather has made him sick. I mean, that's not ideal, but it can happen. Fish and chips is usually quite good. Make sure you take lots of warm clothes if you go to London in the autumn. That's what I can say. But I'm sure he also had a great time in London apart from this. I mean, he's gone sightseeing, seen all of these cool places. And it's an experience. He's got a story. That's what it's all about. Traveling, learning languages, getting new stories. That's all part of the fun. Anyway, those are 2 stories about trips to London. Maybe it inspires you to go and visit as well. But now we're going to listen. We're going to find out, what is it like to live and work, or to live and study in London? We're going to speak to my sister, who does live and who does study in London, and see what she thinks.
Hello.
Hey Abigail, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. You're live on the PAPI English podcast. Are you excited?
I'm buzzing.
I'm buzzing.
Woo.
If you say I'm buzzing, it means I'm really, really excited. I'm buzzing. It's a bit of British slang straight away. Abigail, I'm ringing you because on this podcast we're talking about London, and you live in London, right?
Yes, that's right.
I mean, I should know where my sister lives. That's probably a good idea.
You really do.
Anyway, Abigail, what I want you to ask, because I want the listeners to the podcast to know, what is it like living in London, according to you? What is it like living in London? What do you enjoy about living in London? And what things do you not like about living in London, if anything?
Okay, so I love living in London. It's a really fun city with lots of things to do. So obviously at the moment, because of COVID, you can't do as much, but we have a lot of theatres, a lot of museums, a lot of art galleries, and a lot of cool street markets and places to go to for the day, like flower markets and stuff like that. So it's really good. There's a great variety of things to do. It's very fast paced and very busy. So there's a lot of young professionals working in London. And yeah, I mean, I guess the fact that it's very busy can be negative sometimes. Like you're walking down a street and you can barely move from side to side because it's just so crowded. But other than that, I really like it.
Yeah, you can say like it's a very happening place, London. Like there's always something happening, so you can describe it as happening, and you also described it as fast-paced. So you know everybody's moving very quickly. It's very busy. People generally don't have a lot of time for anything. So Abigail, if you imagine somebody is coming to visit London on holiday, let's say for like 1 week or 2 weeks, What things should they do? What are like the essential things that you cannot miss if you go to London?
Okay, the first thing on your list should be to go to see St Paul's Cathedral, because it's absolutely beautiful, and you can go up to the top and have amazing views of London from there. You should also try out the Sky Garden. So you normally have to book a couple of weeks to a month in advance, but that has it's a very tall building.
Okay.
It's free entry and it has great views of the city, including the Shard. And then I would also recommend that you try out one of the street markets, either on Portobello Road in Notting Hill, or for some street food, or you try some food in Chinatown, which is mostly Chinese food, or Brick Lane, which is mostly Indian food. And if you get the opportunity, there's a lot of boats, the Thames Clipper boat, which go along the Thames River, which is a great opportunity to see lots of sights along there. And then if you have a chance, do a spot of shopping down on Oxford Street.
Abigail, you should start your own tourist agency. You've got the plan of London. There you go. If anybody's thinking about going to London, Abigail's got it sorted for you. She'll plan your trip. Awesome. Also, Ab, what advice would you give someone who is coming to study or work in London? Okay, they're from like a foreign country, and they're coming to London to study and work. What piece of advice would you give them?
To study and work in London. I guess whenever you go studying abroad, it's always a good opportunity to meet different people from different places. So you should definitely try and get involved in some kind of community groups, or join some classes. So, I mean, in London, you can get every kind of classes. You can get dance classes, you can get art classes, something like that. Join something like that where you'll get an opportunity to meet new people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Like, integration is absolutely essential. So you need to, do something where you're part of the community, and it's going to help you learn the language and feel much more at home in that place. Like, Abigail also lived in Hong Kong, and as many of you know, I live in Italy now, and I've lived in Spain and Portugal. And if you go and live in another country, it's absolutely the thing to do to get yourself feeling comfortable. So, Abigail, are you ready? I have got a little London quiz for you.
Okay.
I'm going to test your knowledge about London. And if anybody is listening or watching to this podcast, they can also play along with the quiz to see how many they can also get correct. And let me know how many you got correct in the comments as well. So, Abigail, question number 1.
Yeah.
What is the most visited attraction in London?
St Paul's Cathedral.
Ooh.
No, how is it not?
According to my information, the British Museum is the most visited attraction. Now let me explain why. The British Museum is free. You don't have to pay to go in. So I think for that
and it
reason...
is absolutely massive. It is huge. You could spend all day in the British Museum.
Yeah. You could spend a week in the British Museum. It can take you that long. And it's free. Obviously, you have to pay money to go in St Paul's Cathedral. I went about a year ago or 2 years ago. It doesn't cost too much, like less than £10, but still it stops so many people going, and also because it's smaller, not as many people can go in it at one time, maybe. So yeah, the British Museum is the most popular attraction.
That makes sense. Yeah.
There you go. Question 2, Abigail. Which country has the highest number of tourists to London? So the highest number of people who visit London. Which country would you say?
Tourists.
Mm-hmm.
It's not people that come here and come to London to work for you, but tourists.
Tourists.
It's really hard, but I'm going to say China.
No, it's the United States of America. Obviously, a lot of people from America come to work as well, but also tourists.
Yeah.
So China is a good guess because it's a huge country. It's a massive country, but also the United States is massive, and there are good flights from the United States to London, so it's quite easy for them to visit, I guess. Question 3, Abigail. Can you name 3 typical foods you must try in London?
Oh gosh. Okay. Fish and chips.
Yes, 1.
Oh, there is a meal from the East End that involves eel, I think, but I can't remember what it's called, and I will never try it.
Yeah, eels and mash, I think. Eels and mash. It's like jellified eels. Yep, eels and mash is 1. If eels are like these kind of snakes in the river you get, they're disgusting and slimy. So eels and mash, fish and chips, something that you eat in the morning. Has lots of different ingredients.
Oh, an English breakfast.
An English breakfast is one of the most popular things that people try when they visit London. Okay, Abigail, last question. You use the underground, don't you, in London? You use the metro?
Yeah.
The underground.
Yes, a lot.
A lot. It's the best way to get around in London, really, unless you can afford a taxi all the time. Wow, maybe it's better than a taxi because the roads are so busy.
Yeah.
Okay, how many underground lines are there in London?
Okay. Can I count them?
Yeah, go, count them.
Underground. That doesn't include the overground.
Just the underground, the
I
lines.
would just say 9.
There are 11.
Oh no.
11 underground.
Obviously, I haven't got them all.
What's going on? There's a beeping. Ah, my mom is trying to ring me as well on the podcast. Fantastic. Anyway, Abigail, I'll let you go. I'm going to have to finish the podcast soon because my mom is ringing me. Thank you for being on the PAPI English podcast, and I'll speak to you
No
later.
problem. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so there we go. We've reached the end of this podcast. I hope you have learnt something new about London, and who knows, maybe it's inspired you to go and visit London yourself. Make sure you subscribe or follow this podcast if you've enjoyed it so that you don't miss any future episodes. My name is Sam, I'm your English teacher, and this is PAPI English, Practice and Perfection in English, the podcast. Thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you again in the next podcast.